They have been caught red-handed. Rivals have been found to be downgrading the ratings of commits to Big 12 schools like BYU, like Baylor. Y'all thought you were slick, but you ain't getting away with it. We're talking about it on a crossover edition of Locked On Cougars and Locked On Big 12.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy July, everybody. We're from Provo to Orlando. It's way too hot to go outside. I'm Drake Toll from America's #1 Big 12 podcast, Locked On Big 12. And that's Jake Hatch of Locked On Cougars, talking all things BYU. Thanks for making our two shows your first listen every single day. Colt Barber, a very popular Baylor reporter, caught on to rivals diluting Baylor recruits' rankings when they committed to Baylor. How about Ryder Lyons? 6th overall player, 5-star quarterback. The second he commits to BYU, Rivals, very popular recruiting site, is caught not just diluting, plummeting his ranking, plummeting his worth as a recruit because he's coming to the Big 12 and to BYU. We'll talk about those. We'll also get into the SEC trying to dunk on the Big 12. Of course, they did at media days. That was, you could just see it coming. Their commissioner to their coaches, they want you to think they're the best, and they haven't won a national championship here in a few years. And then Provo, Utah. Buy stock now. They're not crazy. Well, they're not as crazy as you think. This place is pretty cool, and I'm going to wax poetic about it for the rest of the week and into next week. If you hit subscribe, we'd keep our jobs. I really didn't bury the lead here, Jake. Ryder Lyons commits to BYU, and Echo Warrior on Twitter says, let me get this straight. He's your 6th overall player, consensus 5-star quarterback, chooses BYU over Oregon, drops to 53rd overall, loses a star. But Bryson Beaver picks up an Oregon offer, gets his 4th star, and jumps Ryder as the 44th player in the country after not being in the top 300, but committing to Oregon and jumping. We saw this with ESPN last offseason. Rivals, 24/7 ESPN. These recruiting sites, I'm sorry, soapbox for a second here. I know you haven't said a word yet. Why it matters, this goes into FPI. This goes into how schools are ranked preseason, how they're ranked midseason, how their rosters stack up. Recruiting rankings go into this when ESPN or the College Football Playoff Committee look at that 3-letter acronym, FPI. And this, for the Big 12, for BYU, for Baylor, for anybody, is a travesty that is continually putting our conference behind. And now they're caught doing it again.
Well, and that's the thing about this, Drake, is you look at it and it is just cut and dried. Like, you cannot argue with me that a guy like Bryson Beaver, who just about 2 months ago was a 3-star prospect, you mentioned outside the top 300 in the entire country, committed to Boise State. BYU wins a recruiting battle head-to-head with Oregon for Ryder Lyons, who, by all accounts, is a bona fide 5-star prospect. I can tell you Brandon Huffman from 24/7 Sports, so another recruiting site out there, says for his money that Ryder Lyons is the best quarterback prospect in the 2026 class. He believes he is the top dog when it comes to quarterbacks. And then you see him, as you mentioned, plummet in these rankings. And then somehow this Bryson Beaver kid, who was a 3-star prospect not that long ago and committed to Boise State. Hey, just because he's got an Oregon Ducks commit next to his name, suddenly he's a 4-star prospect. This is a really, really shady thing that Rivals is doing, and it's a bad, bad look.
Jake, I want to go back to the point being made that because there will be BYU fans, Cincinnati fans, UCF fans who get a recruit and like, well, let's decide it on the field. Rankings don't matter. Come on. Huzzah. Win your games. This actually has a place in where these schools are ranked, where they are put from an FPI standpoint, and where the College Football Playoff Committee puts them from a strength, a perspective of strength.
No, that's the thing about this. Perception is reality, Drake. And when you have top tier talent that if it goes to the Big 12, suddenly it's being downgraded simply because of the school they committed to, that's a really, really awful look. And you mentioned it absolutely affects opinions of the schools in the Big 12, BYU, Baylor, any of the 16 member schools in this league. They should be upset about this because it's going to put you once again behind the 8 ball. They're going to favor the Big 10. They're going to favor the SEC because supposedly in these recruiting analysts' minds, they're going to value that offer and that commit that much more than a commitment to a BYU or to a Houston. can't for the life of me understand it. And at one point during my media career, Drake, I did work for one of these recruiting sites, and I can tell you it's fairly subjective. And the situation is it feels like it's always been an inexact science. It's been getting better all the time. But this dropping Ryder Lyons simply because he picked BYU, and then the fallback option for the Oregon Ducks, that's what it was. It was a fallback option to take Bryson Beaver. All of a sudden, he leaps up past Ryder Lyons in these rankings. Come on now.
Tell me, is there, where there's smoke, there's fire, as the comments say. Is there fire here? Like, well, there's no coincidence at this point, and just immediately after committing, he drops.
And now here's the thing. I can rip on them about Ryder Lyons, but on the flip side of the coin here, Drake, I do have to say that Legend Glasgow, another commit to BYU, just recently went from 3-star to 4-star status at Rivals. So on the flip side, we saw a guy get upgraded after he committed to BYU. But here's the deal. I cannot for the life of me understand how you can justify, it was Echo Warrior that put that tweet out there, that a guy that was a consensus top 10 prospect by most of these recruiting services out there, suddenly he's outside the top 50. That's a really, really bad look. Yeah, I'm with you. There's fire there because if you're Rivals, you got to speak on this. And the other thing is now Rivals and On3 are connected, if I'm not mistaken. There's been a buyout or something that's going on. I don't know for the life of me what went down here, but it stinks. There's no doubt about it. There is fire there.
There's certainly something happening at Rivals and 24/7 ESPN guilty of the same thing, where BYU lands a blue chip quarterback or Baylor lands a good player or UCF for the same for any team in the conference.
Well,
and now
Henderson went to Houston and got downgraded himself, who's another 5-star prospect.
Yeah, it is across the board in this league. It's as if you were really, really good, but the second that the school you committed to doesn't bring value to Rivals, doesn't get the same clicks as maybe an Oregon quarterback who's now a 44th overall, 4-star, teetering 5-star quarterback, that gets a lot more clicks than maybe a BYU 5-star. That's what it is.
You and I both know, Drake, the BYU draws eyeballs and gets clicks.
More than Oregon.
So that should factor in more maybe than it does. But for whatever reason, Rivals apparently thinks that Oregon is the end-all be-all. If you commit to the Oregon Ducks, you get a massive upgrade in terms of your perception as a player. And yeah, if you pick the BYU Cougars or really any other program in the Big 12, they're like, hey, what are you doing? And you no longer are worthy of your lofty status.
Yeah, that's being exposed once again from these national recruiting sites that are just in it for the money. Shocking, I know. Coming up, speaking of in it for the money, the SEC just utilize their media days to dunk on the Big 12. It was effectively Big 12 Media Days East in Atlanta this week on Locked On Big 12 and Locked On Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is exactly where I go to make the MLB fun. Look, I tried to watch the All-Star game, and there was the hit-off thing that they did, and I was like, this is kind of brutal to watch. Luckily, via FanDuel, I was able to go in, and whether it's soccer, baseball, softball, all kinds of stuff, I can place real-time bets on whatever I'd like to help elevate the viewing experience. Exactly what I did for the All-Star game. FanDuel has new daily promotions as well. It's easy to use, fast to pay out, whether I'm placing a same-game parlay on a regular season game or watching a bet ride into the 9th inning of the All-Star game. FanDuel makes it easy to be part of the action. If you're new to FanDuel, new customers bet $5, get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. It's FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Locked On. It's Jake Hatch of Locked On BYU, Locked On Cougars, I should say, talking all things BYU. The SEC tries to dunk on the Big 12 once again. Kirby Smart's out there saying 2 conferences are stronger than others. And if you don't agree with that, then you probably just don't know college football. And I could argue that 3-9 Oklahoma State had their lone signature win against an SEC team last season. And plenty of Big 12 teams have shown up SEC squads in the postseason, namely in bowl games. See that year in and year out where, Oklahoma State, just okay Oklahoma State team beats Texas A&M, but A&M wasn't even trying. They didn't want to be there. There's always some sort of excuse. Big 12 media days, there was really little to no mention of the SEC.
Yeah.
None of the Big 10. It was about the Big 12 and promoting this conference. The SEC media days, it felt like every head coach, the commissioner, had just a gun pointed at them. They're like, say something mean about everyone else. It's not about you. It's about diluting everyone else and making them all feel bad. I really felt like SEC Media Days was another campaign for self-promotion that falls flat because it's about everyone else that's not the SEC.
Okay, the SEC hasn't won a national title. This is their third season. They're looking for a national title, Drake, and I think they're feeling the heat. We had Greg Sankey.
Haven't been to one in a couple of years there, huh?
Exactly. Another thing is Greg Sankey gets up there in his opening remarks and says there's no conference out there in the entire world that would trade their schedule for our schedule, whether it's 8 or 9 games. You mentioned Kirby Smart. We have even Garrett Nussmeier, the quarterback for LSU, saying this is the best conference, bar none, in America. It's all drivel, man. The thing is, if you guys are that worried about the Big 12 or really any other conference out there, you are not where it means more. The SEC is supposed to be the biggest, baddest you-know-what out there when it comes to college football. And they are just absolutely beside themselves that they have lost their strategic advantages, namely being able to have bagmen that funnel NIL under the table, apparently.
Yeah, I think it's a school like BYU or Texas Tech in the Big 12. And then there are a couple that are coming along as well in this conference that look at the SEC and go, we're doing it now too, because we can. It's legal. And once it's legal, we have a donor base that wants to provide. Now, Cincinnati has to come along. UCF has to come along. That's with time. But even West Virginia is starting to get there. Kansas State in basketball, namely, you're starting to see a lot of investment in these Big 12 schools. I think even Baylor is very strong in the NIL category, despite rumors of them losing out on players because they couldn't bid as high. The SEC. Hi, Rob Wright's dad. I think you're trying to say hi to Rob Wright's dad. The SEC, more so than maybe I can remember in the last 5 to 10 years, seems backed into a corner, which, if I can be so transparent, even as the host of Locked On Big 12, you don't have to act that way. We know you are the best conference in college football. That's probably something we can get behind. Why do they seem so just scared of everything else that probably shouldn't scare the big dog?
I think that they feel like their grasp and their hold on like the kind of the around the neck of college football and being able to really control all of it, Drake, is slipping. I legitimately think that they feel like the strategic advantages they have had, because I'm with you. The SEC for almost my entire lifetime has been the biggest, baddest conference in college football. They had the best athletes. They had the biggest games. They had the biggest brands, all this stuff. But all of a sudden, it feels tenuous in terms of their being able to really have the control of the sport like they're used to. The Big Ten has usurped a lot of the power from them. I think that Brett Yormark, he is absolutely making inroads. He suggests a 5+11 model. All of a sudden, Greg Sankey says, okay, let's run it up the flagpole and see what our coaches think. Coach is like, yeah, 5+11, we're in on that. I think Greg Sankey's like, oh, hey, whoa, okay, well, I guess we're all on board. I think that they feel like their stranglehold on the sport of college football is shaky at best, and they're trying to regain some modicum of control of it. But really, as you mentioned, Drake, the rules have changed, and programs in the Big 12, like a BYU, like a Texas Tech, they are here to play ball, and the SEC is not happy about it.
So if the idea is the SEC feels like they're maybe losing a grip on college football, they feel that way. Do you think it's realistic? Do you think the SEC is actually less powerful than they were 2 years ago?
No, I don't think they are, but I think that in their minds, they're losing control, and that's why they're speaking out so vociferously as they are. I think that they still are the biggest brand in college football. They're the most recognizable, because you and I both grew up watching CBS games at 1:30 on national television, and it was the Alabamas, the LSUs. That you can think of the brands the SEC boasts. There are very few brands across the board, or conferences, I should say, that could match the brand power that the SEC contains within it. And they added the likes of Oklahoma and Texas to it from the Big 12. I don't think that they have lost that control. I just think that internally they're maybe inside their own head thinking that they are losing that control.
Right, Yormark got to come to the podium before Greg Sankey when it comes to media days and the approach there. And Yormark said 5+11 period. He said he was going to fight with Jim Phillips effectively against the SEC and the Big Ten to ensure that was the case. How important was it that the commissioner of the Big 12, who's a very good businessman, got the first say?
it was critical. Here's the thing. You set the tenor, you set the tone of what these media days are going to be talked about, because guess what? You got out there first. You said your piece. The SEC is trying to play catch up this week. Is it Big Ten next week and ACC after that? I don't recall exactly what the order is. They're all going to have to answer back in a time when they finally step to the podium there. Tony Petitti for the Big Ten. You mentioned Jim Phillips from the ACC. They're going to have to either back up what a guy like Brett Yormark said, or they're going to have to fight against it, which I fully expect from the Big Ten. Petitti's been very clear that he wants that 4-4-2-2-2 or 1, whatever that model is. He wants the 4 guaranteed berths. I respect that the SEC is saying, hey, we're cool with the 5+11 model, because I do think they will get their fair share, more than their fair share, of programs in annually if that's implemented. But I think it was absolutely genius that the Big 12 has the first media days, and a guy like Brett Yormark gets out there and sets the tenor of what this conversation is going to be like over the ensuing months.
Yeah, I feel like the SEC, no matter what the ultimate model is going to win. I mean,
Yes,
they're going to get a good portion of teams in. If they want 4 automatic, they're already going to get 4 in the 5+11, and likely that 6th, give it a 5th.
The thing is, the history says, Drake, that if you go back, if you were to take the parameters they've set for that 5+11 model and run them back through all the different college football playoffs, and I guess even back to the BCS era, the SEC on average annually would have had 5 programs minimum in every single year. And sometimes I think I saw a number as high as 7 could have gotten in. They will still get plenty of programs in. And I think that's why they do not fear a 5+11 model.
Yeah, last year would have been the same thing. And there's no more arguing about South Carolina or Alabama or Ole Miss. Those schools are now in the college football playoff. So if their whole deal is crying that they can't have it their way, you're kind of going to get it your way no matter what if you're the SEC. Now, the Big Ten, on the other hand, Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, past that, it's kind of a crapshoot for the rest of the conference year in and year out. Indiana may be good one year. Illinois is kind of on the rise. But really, it's those 3 programs that carry the boats for the league. And even Michigan was down last year, certainly wouldn't have made the college football playoff. So the Big Ten, I could see them really wanting 4 automatic bids. The SEC is going to be fine.
Yeah, and that's the thing. We've heard Tony Petitti reiterate that he wants that 4 automatic bids, because you're right. Outside of their top 3 brands, the Big Ten is kind of a smorgasbord of a lot of different programs out there. And every so often, one will pop up, a Wisconsin. Every so often, you mentioned the likes of an Illinois. But guess what? Those 3 power brands are really runs that league. So they need to guarantee the 4, so they're not left with just 3 when an SEC could have 6 or 7.
Coming up, Provo, Utah. And I know this is different. This is like, what, we're going to reserve a segment for a city. The answer is yes. It is not what you probably think it is. Locked On Big 12, Locked On Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Jake, the first time that I get to wax poetic about Explore Utah Valley, the folks over there who invited me out to Provo, I want you to be here because you had dinner at Sundance. I didn't realize this was the biggest misconception I had about Provo as someone who's been 8 times now. Mm-hmm. I didn't understand 20 minutes from BYU's campus, you can be trout fishing, fly fishing on a river. You can be at Sundance ziplining. You can go across town to effectively a brewery, a bar, get a pizza, and like as many beers as you possibly want in Provo. You could tailgate at the Marriott Convention Center. You can tailgate at Sundance. You can go jet ski with Cosmo Cougar on a lake. And that lake, I'm being told, no longer has E. coli. They're fixing the E. coli. It's getting better and better every day on Utah Lake. I don't know if I understood prior to Explore Utah Valley saying, hey, come explore Utah Valley with us. I was like, well, I've done that before. Then I come out and realize the misconceptions that other Big 12 fan bases have about Provo, about the surrounding area of, oh, those are those crazy, I'll use their word, the crazy Mormons. This is just all a big religious, oh, you can't have a beer, you can't have fun, you can't. It's wrong. Like the ignorance of what people believe Provo is, and certainly the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which is what we call it. We don't say Mormon. It's what we call it. They have a stronghold on the university, but it's not the entire area. No. And it doesn't dictate the way that a West Virginia fan, a TCU fan, a Baylor fan, a UCF fan enjoy their experience during a BYU game day. I've seen the football games, but now what I got to see the last few days here in Provo alongside you is that most people will never understand just how much there is to do that isn't A, BYU, B, the faith that BYU stands for, or C, stuff you have to do sober. There's a whole lot in Provo that is quintessential college football, quintessential vacation that folks just never see.
Drake, welcome to my hometown, man. I grew up a stone's throw away from Provo in a place called Orem, and you drove right through Orem multiple times, I think, while you've been out here. This is exactly what Provo and Utah Valley have been battling against for years. I really want to give a shout out to the entirety of Explore Utah Valley, Lee Adamson and his crew, Skylar Beltran, one of the county commissioners. He's been in contact with you and I about this whole endeavor. And it's to dispel the notions that preconceived notions that many have about BYU, about Provo, about the surrounding area. I grew up here, Drake. I don't plan on ever leaving this place. It is my home turf, and I absolutely love it. And I think the more people that come out here and see it, they understand what it is, what it stands for, and realize, yeah, it's not just a bunch of crazy Mormons out here that aren't able to drink.
You said the word. You said Mormons.
Okay. But that's what they all. Okay, here's the thing. I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I am as thoroughbred as you're going to come in terms of being a member of the faith. But guess what? That's what everybody calls us out there in the world. They call us Mormons, and they think that we're crazy. They think that you can't find a beer here. Guess what? We've got multiple distilleries in Utah Valley. You went up to Sundance with me at an incredible dinner, and you had some incredible local brews, if I'm not mistaken. I think Epic Brewing was one of them that you.
5 beers. I had 5, and no one judged me. No one. They were like, you know what? Keep them coming.
Hey,
we were with the director of marketing. It was like, yeah, I'm gonna have a few beers with you. It's a normal thing.
Yeah, the philosophy here is live and let live. I know that sounds like it flies in the face of what you think people, members of the Church of Jesus Christ, would be saying about people that are imbibing and the like. But here's the deal. This is a really, really cool place. I appreciate the fact that they brought you out. Our good friend Mountaineer Paul from Locked On West Virginia. He's coming out as well to explore. This is exactly what Explore Utah Valley has been needing to do for quite some time. And I'm appreciative that they're putting up the money to do this, because it allows people like you to come out here, experience something you would have never experienced otherwise, and realize, hey, you know what? It's a pretty cool place. I want to come back and do this again. I can tell you, I've talked to so many fans who have come to Provo for games over the years, and they came in with an idea of what they were going to expect, and they left with a completely different experience. It's an awesome place. The people are ultra friendly. And the best part is you can do everything you want to do, even what you might not consider is available in Utah Valley. It's all here for you.
Yeah. And people will say, well, this is a sports podcast. Well, why bring religion into it? And Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, right?
Yeah. Or Housewives of Salt Lake City. Right. We've got a bunch of different shows that have involved allegedly members of the Church of Jesus Christ.
Sure, right. And that's the focal point. That's kind of the crux of this, is they want to not expose necessarily a faith, but they want to paint it in a light that is strictly for entertainment. And so for me, that's the A1, right? There are still people like, oh, wow, that's polygamy, or what they use the cult word. And then you show up and you go, no, this is not, no one's forcing anything upon you. Mm-hmm. It just because when you walk into a BYU game day, everyone's sober, which, by the way, is the scariest part. It's like, how is it this loud and no one's drinking? And the Cougar tails and giving the opposing fan base ice cream and all these things, you're like, wow, is this some sort of like indoctrination? Are they trying to catch me? No, it's the heart of hospitality that the Utah Valley carries that kind of extends to everyone.
Yeah, that's the thing about this, Drake, is we as Utahns, we want to put our best foot forward. And if that involves having to give you some ice cream, give you a handshake and thank you for coming to Provo, they're happy to do it. I love the reputation that BYU fans have generated early on as members of the Big 12 Conference. They had the same, I guess you call it notoriety, even though it's a negative term, when they were independent. I remember when Wisconsin came out here, I think it was 2017. They drank one of the 2 bars in Provo completely dry, Drake. And I talked with multiple Wisconsin fans who came out for that game and said they had one of the best experiences of their entire life. And one of them, if I recall correctly, he said, I've been all over the country. I've followed Wisconsin all over this country, and this is about as good of an environment as I ever experienced. And you mentioned it. He mentioned it too. These people are all sober. This is nuts.
Yeah, that's one of the craziest parts. And for me, and I mentioned this to you, it's the idea of discipline.
Yeah.
Army, Navy, Air Force. There are schools that are formed with discipline at the forefront of what they do because they have a military tie-in, because they have some sort of the Citadel, right? For BYU, it is a similar level of learning through discipline. The honor code, we talked about a lot of the honor code the last few weeks. Learning through discipline when faith is at the forefront of that. Baylor doesn't do that. TCU doesn't do that. Notre Dame doesn't do that the same way that BYU does. They don't commit the same way that BYU does. And it doesn't mean these are scary people who want you to come to their city and you to leave as a member of the church because they forced it upon you. It is an environment of, wow, they just all love each other and love me. And it's this revolutionary way to experience college football, revolutionary way to experience a game day. And if you're a UCF fan, a Cincinnati fan, and these schools have been to BYU, will continue to come to BYU, a TCU fan, a Baylor fan, I think experiencing it at least once and doing it for days on end, go see the Utah Valley, is the way to do it.
Well, and that's the thing about this, Drake, because a lot of people will think they're going to go to Colorado, and you get up to Boulder, and the mountains are there. Obviously, Folsom's one thing, but we had this conversation at Sundance. Everything that people think that Denver and Colorado is, Salt Lake City and Provo, Utah actually are. The mountains are right on top of you. You can be Sundance Resort. You can go ski there, Drake. Where I grew up in Orem, Utah, if I hit every light right, I could be up on the mountain skiing. I could legitimately be skiing or snowboarding in 30 minutes. Yep. Sorry, Denver, eat your heart out. That's never going to happen. That's just not a thing. I love where I'm from. I love living here. I love showing it off to people. And yes, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, we are an evangelical faith. We are a missionary-minded church. But guess what? As you mentioned, they're not going to force it on you. If you're genuinely interested in learning more about the faith, we'll talk to you about it, but we're not going to force it down your throat when you come out here.
They're different. The folks at the Utah Valley are different. Again, this is like a revolutionary thing in college athletics for most fan bases. They're not crazy.
Well, here's the thing about this, Drake, and I've been thinking about this. Why aren't other Big 12 communities doing this? We have half of this league, BYU included, is joined this conference within the last 3 years. There should be more of this by the local tourism boards in Tucson, in Tempe, in Salt Lake City, in Boulder, Colorado, etc. They should be bringing people to their communities, bringing content creators if they want, like what Explore Utah Valley is doing here. Show off your community so other Big 12 fans know, hey, that's a place I'd like to go check out. I should go check it out because you need to experience it. And guess what? So long as this conference is together, you're going to be traveling to these places more often than not.
Yep. Next few days, I'll certainly be putting out even more content about what the trip to Provo was like in my experience. That is Jake Hatch of Locked On Cougs at Jacob C. Hatch on X. You can find us wherever you find your podcast. Mm-hmm. This has been, it always will be, Locked On. Thanks for making it your first listen every single day. Crossover with Cougars and Dose Grande.